We use the generic road intro. We're pretty big deals.
We've come to love it. Get a bit of headbanging going.
Yeah, like we thought it was a joke at the start, and then probably about 3 in, we're like, no, this is our thing. We're staying with that. I'm sure road will get into us at some point, but
I'm glad you guys are more mature than me.
Back on the Imposter road trip today, Burso.
Yeah, savvy road trip that we didn't bring any savvies to, so we'll have to send Joel some in the mail. But anyway, this one's a little bit out of our normal realm, so everything else has sort of been very first responder and military veterans that we've had involved. But at the moment we've got Joel Jammal, who has come from. Well, we'll actually run through it because I don't actually know your whole story. I just obviously met you through the election.
Right. I like it that way.
Yeah, so I saw him first on the election, sitting in his car doing a thing, like just going, "Yep, things aren't any good. I'm pretty disappointed. I'm going to try and make a change." And then that resonated with me because I obviously just quit my job to run for politics, but now coming in here, and I'm just starting a podcast, and you've been doing it for another 3 years on what I have, and now you've got a studio and a big wall art, and everything's looking pretty cool in here. So where did you start pre-COVID? What were you doing before that?
Yeah, look, I was, what the hell was I doing? I was working in the construction industry and property development industry. I was an assistant development manager for a company in Sydney in the western suburbs. And white collar job, I'd finished my 1 year probation. So I was rock solid in that position. It had been the culmination of 12, 13 years of schooling and then a 3-year degree in the University of UTS. I've done my time on the tools, I'd done some general labouring, bricklaying, steel tying, general, stuff on the construction site. No expert in any field, just something to pay the bills while I was in uni and do what I had to do, at home and pay for leisure. But no, I ended up losing my job mid-2020 due to the lockdowns. This was well before the jab had been rolled out. And as a result, I got made redundant, which was really unfortunate because obviously that was like...
So they were just letting everybody go. That was like the latest on, first out sort of thing?
Pretty much. I was a relatively new employee there, again, only 1 year. And the problem with that was the role I had as well was the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah.
A lot of the crap kicking sort of stuff. And that's fine. Everyone's going to do that at some point. Yeah. But at the same time, it was the reason I got culled was because I was in the tendering team for construction. Anyone that knows what tendering is, when you work for a builder or a property developer and you want to tender to build a project on behalf of someone else, another developer perhaps, a lot of those developments didn't go through that we applied for. We applied for something crazy like 20 different tenders for different projects up there, medium-sized, developments. And the banks tightened up their funding the moment COVID hit in early 2020. And these projects, they pretty much didn't go through. And naturally, the business investing all this time and money into me and trying to win these projects didn't come through, obviously. And I got made redundant as a result. That was unfortunate, but now with the benefit of hindsight, we all know that was not necessary, the lockdowns.
Yep.
And that's really unfortunate for not just me, but for more importantly, people out there that had generational pizza companies or farms or whatever, construction companies, excavation companies, corner stores, hospitality got hit hard and just being closed down just from decisions made by government ministers, which we didn't realize they had the power to do that. And the fans of fear was fanned by the media, and it really upset a lot of people, and it drove the politicians to do that. And when I recognized that, I realized, look, I'm not going to get my job back maybe for another 6-7 months from June till about early 2021, because that's when there's typically a high recruitment drive. But what I can do is I've been following politics for a few years now, since 2015, so about 5-6 years. I've seen what some great podcasters in America and the UK have been doing. I have a general understanding of how the patterns are with regards to politics, populism on the rise, people being discontent with their politicians. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to start a show. I'm going to try and show people who's punching them, why are they punching them, and most importantly, how they can punch back politically. Because I think that there's a great line in the Bible where God says, "My people suffer because of their lack of knowledge." And that's exactly what was going on. There were so many people that were politically illiterate and they needed to be upskilled. And I think that's why you ran into me in the Victorian state election, because I was providing free tools to people and showing them exactly how to get the results they want in a state election.
So you've you've lost your job and then you've seen that, because was there a turning point, America?
Turning point.
So you based yourself off that. So when did you decide that was something you were going to try and have a go, though? Was that after you'd been quit, or did you always thought that's something you might want to do? Or
look, it's funny how God's a funny guy, and I am going to make reference to him a few times because I can't ignore the impact that he's had on my decision making over the last few years. He's a really funny guy. I'd already started a couple of weeks of interviews as a hobby. And they were well received before I was made redundant.
And was that about politics or was that about something else?
Yeah, it was about politics, and they were very well received. And the amount of views there, I think it got was like 150,000 views just on one of the interviews and all the clips associated. I was like, wow, that's something. And I got a few donations as a result, people signing up $10 a month.
Okay.
Once I hit that, I realized, okay, I've hit the mark. There's something there.
Yep.
And then when I was made redundant, it was almost like, what's that saying? When a door's closed, God opens a window or something.
Yep.
I realized, okay, I think that's what I've got to do because there's no other, everything else is closed. And so to an extent, it wasn't a hard decision, but to an extent, to any normal, sane, maybe less risk-averse person, it would be like, that was an insane decision. Why would you do that? That's so risky.
Yeah. Was that like a quick transition? You said you already started to do it, so did it happen pretty quickly, or something that had been brewing for a while that you were building up the confidence to do?
It was one a week. Now, in terms of my my ability to articulate myself and give speeches or whatever, and my confidence with that goes way back into my schooling. But with regards to the podcasting, different story. It was once a week. It was very, very slow. These things do take time to build that sort of, let's call it a cult following per se, but it allows you to build that momentum over time. That's why it is a coveted thing. These things don't just happen overnight. So your character's got to be tested per se.
So you went and did a talk at Town Hall.
Yeah.
How many podcasts had you done before that?
How many podcasts had I done? By that point, I'd probably accrued something like, I couldn't tell you the number of podcasts because there were a lot of individual videos.
Closer to 50.
Closer to 50.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Closer to 50. In terms of the amount of views, it was probably about, by that point, 20 to 25 million views, aggregate views. So that was over the course of 1 year.
So, because a lot of the things that we've had so far seems to be with people trying to overcome imposter syndrome, because that's what we try and do is say, like, because somebody is sitting at home in their car listening to this now is like, I'm not happy with my job. I'm doing this. I don't think I'll make a difference. I can't do whatever. And, people see people that are all the way up doing something else. They don't see the journey along the way. So like you talking at Town Hall, I didn't realise you'd actually already been doing stuff. So I'm just like, this bloke's just decided to get up on stage. I'm like, that's pretty ballsy. But if you've already had 25 million views, you'd probably be pretty confident beforehand that people were happy to listen to you speak.
And important to note, the Town Hall speech and those 25 million views were before I came into the brand of Turning Point Australia as well. So it's not like it was leveraged off the credibility of the Americans. I didn't come into that until September 2021 on the 1st of that month. But no, the lead up to it was, I was a guy on the site. I was bricklaying. I was steel tying. Yeah, sure. I went to a very, very good school. That can't be understated. I went to the King's School in North Parramatta, which is one of the most expensive schools in the country. And it prides itself in its cadet corps. It's got the biggest cadet corps in Australia.
Okay.
And I did have a military role there, which is why you probably see the CUO sword, which I used on parade.
Cadet under officer.
Yeah, cadet under officer.
Have done cadets.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of people, they have no idea that this sort of thing exists. But in terms of instilling discipline in yourself, in terms of going through the ranks, going through the motions, and also having to teach other cadets, guys your age, teenage boys, discipline, marching in a line. I mean, this is unthinkable for some people.
Yeah, and as a young lad doing that, to teach other young lads is very, especially now, like people have no interest in doing that sort of stuff at the moment. Yeah.
So within a space of, we're talking a few months, you've gone from being a project manager to having many million views online and then speaking live. How does that feel? Is that natural? Is that something because you had faith in what you were doing? Like, what was the experience? Because for a lot of people, that's just two completely different worlds.
And the podcast, going from speaking behind a microphone where there's no interaction, and then online, obviously you see comments and whatever else, but to town hall where now you're there, there's no edit, there's no anything. Like, were you confident going up on the stage?
No, I was. A lot of people ask me about that. I think we should go back a step to 2019. Sorry to jump everywhere. I was at 3 talks from Jordan Peterson when he was in Sydney in February 2019.
I would have been at the Melbourne ones at the same time.
Brilliant guy. Now, I happened to be, I missed out on him just in previous years, so I wanted to get the top tier ticket to see this guy, and I wanted to ask him a question. My question to him was, how do you reverse the long march through the institutions? Very complex thing. Many people are probably listening and like, what the hell's the long march through the institutions? It's basically the Marxist takeover of all the cultural institutions, Hollywood, media, TV, newspapers. The answer I got was so encouraging to me. He said this new rule in one of his new books he wrote, which is called 12 More Rules for Life. It was the one he wrote after. He gave it to me early. I was very privileged to receive this early. And he said, Joel, where responsibility's been abdicated, opportunity lurks. Now, I sat on that for a bit, and then I inferred another meaning. Where responsibility's been abdicated, opportunity lurks. But if you don't seize that opportunity, the totalitarians will. It's a gap. Nature abhors a vacuum. And I realized, okay, and this is in answering your question, I had to do what I did because it had to be done. It just had to be done. So there is just some things in life, it will speak to you and you want to set it right. You're like, is someone going to set that right? Now, during COVID, I'm Middle Eastern. We don't usually talk. We normally defer our actions to our elders and respect them. And when the elder's speaking, you shut the F up. That's the tradition, especially the military tradition, right? There's a chain of command. I'm a young guy. I'm only 21 at the time, and so I want to follow the lead of an adult. I want to follow the leader, your sergeant, your general, whatever. But they never presented themselves. In fact, the very people that we were all hoping would step up didn't. The politicians, our church leaders, which can't be understated how important they were in Australia's history, Anglican church leaders, even the Middle Eastern leaders, all of them didn't stand up. There was only one that actually stood up, and it's such a shame that he was stabbed this week, Bishop Maramati Emmanuel, but he's doing well. He was the only one. All of the other leaders, the mosque leaders, the Christian leaders, the Judaism leaders, they were busy setting up vaccine centres at their actual temples, mosques, churches, and taking the grant money associated with that. And on top of that, our politicians, our media, who are meant to be the guardians of democracy, they all let us down. And I'm one of I got let off easy. Like, I lost my job, sure. My dad passed away because he couldn't get the cancer treatment because of the lockdowns. Okay. But there are people out there with kids. There were people that couldn't feed their kids. Their kids couldn't go to school. There were kids that were molested by their parents in some cases, because the number one place to report that is the schools. And if your kid's not going to school, the reporting is going to drop. Like, I got off easy. I just lost a job and I'm a young guy. That's fine. No kids. But the responsibility that had been abdicated by the guardians of democracy was just, it makes me very aggressive and want to swear. So I stood up and I said, look, this is what's going on in your country. This is who's punching you. This is why they're doing it. And this is how you can punch back, because there needed to be a correction. It was what was necessary. And so in answering your question about the town hall speech, was I scared or not sure about getting on the steps? It wasn't a question, I don't know how to explain the feeling. It wasn't a question of was I scared? It was necessary. It had to be done. There were people getting hurt at that protest. Both police were getting hurt, but protests were getting hurt. And when I was there, I was getting frustrated because it was like, these people have come, they're hurting, and their problems aren't being articulated. They need to be.
Sorry, before that day, did you know you were going to speak, or did you just decide on the day?
No. It was very much spur of the moment.
Right.
That's a complex day. I was actually, I told people I'm going there to cover it as a journalist, and that's the truth. Now, when I got there, What I didn't know was that the original poster that was put out by the organizer who'd put in a request to do the protest, because all protest organisers have got to do that.
Yep.
I didn't know that he was intimidated by police the night before to withdraw that application. So no one knew that, there was no permit to hold the protest.
Yeah.
So everyone rocked up and there was no leader once again.
So is that when you decide, because, and I know this seems to be a very religious thing, but it seems to be people have a calling. Like that's, because other people have a thing where they're like, just like, if not me, who's going to do it? And then other people have, some people have religion where they speak to whatever God it is they have, and they have, this is a, like I feel like I was chosen to do something or whatever it is. And it's interesting because some people have religion that makes them lose their imposter syndrome because they feel like they're backed. Other people I find have, it's a history of things that they've done, like with a lot of like military and first responders. It's a breakdown of like they did the academy, they did training, they've done this and they felt trained, so they feel confident to do something. And other people just feel completely like they can't do anything, and they sort of get incapacitated. So I just wonder, like yours sounds very much like it was because you have faith, you're allowed to do whatever it is you feel like you can do and you feel backed, whereas other people that don't have faith might be missing that.
It's difficult to, the way I saw it, and at the town hall, what ended up happening was the police approached me and they said, we can't control this protest. There's 50,000 people here. They're responding.
So why did they come and speak to you?
Because I was live streaming and I was at the front.
Oh, right.
I was at the start of the protest, which is where journalists are.
Yeah.
They came up to me and they noticed that when they asked the people to do something when we were marching along, they didn't listen. They got swore at. Whereas when I saw what they were trying to say and I was like, oh, no, it makes sense, slow down, or so we can clump up a bit more.
Yeah.
Then they responded. The police noticed that a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then the commander came to me and said, okay, turn your live stream off. This is all on camera.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you a fine, but we need to work on this situation because I appreciate not getting a fine. But I really would, but I understand there is a situation here, whether you choose to do one or not. We need to do what the original plan was on this poster, okay? Because that's why people rocked up.
Yeah.
And we did that, got them to the steps, and then when we got to the steps, everyone was getting impatient because there was a line of police there. People wanted to ram through the police and keep going through the city. And I was like, no, hang on. This is the destination. And I went to the police line. I said, where's the commander? I don't know where he went. When one of them showed up, I said, you need to let me speak to these people. They've come here. They have legitimate concerns. If they're not articulated, you're going to have a worse situation on your hands. I've seen people getting hurt, police and the people. It was important I said that to him because that's the truth. And that's what happened. But because there's a lot of people there that rocked up and they had violence in mind. And there's a lot of people that rocked up there and they had legitimate concerns. And I was like, look, I'm here for the legitimate concern people. They have concerns. Let me articulate them. Then we can send them home, all right? Got up to the steps and he begrudgingly let me do it because there were people behind me that were cheering my name because they'd seen my content. If they hadn't done that, I don't think he would have realised that I had the backing of people. And he had no choice. He was not in control of that situation. He gave me a mic, a red one.
So the police gave you the mic?
Yeah, he gave me the mic. It didn't work for some reason. And so someone from the audience gave me a white one. But the point was they gave me a mic. It was endorsed. He, in fact, got on the phone and talked to his commander. And then I got up there and I tried to, as best I can, articulate the concerns of the people. And I said, end the lockdown, no vaccine mandates, no vaccine passports, and we want an answer on ivermectin. We need to know if it actually works, basically, from the FDA. And so that was the situation with that protest. Now, when I got off those steps...
So when you got up there and they gave you the mic and you were going to speak, because this is the first time you've done public speaking, I'm assuming, or if you don't, you've been doing public speaking before?
Times.
As in because you're doing live streaming, etc.?
Well, no. My largest speech I'd ever done in front of a similarly large audience was about 2,000 people when I was in year 6. It was my school captain's speech. It was 10 minutes long, and it was funny as well, which is not easy to do at that age. But I had a lot of training with regards to public speaking.
So you'd already been you'd been a public speaker, obviously in high school, and then as a cadet under officer, I'm assuming you've obviously addressed a lot of people. So you didn't feel nervous the first time because that wasn't really your first time.
No,
just obviously a different situation.
And that's what it's if you looked back on my life, and this is what happened when I got off those steps. you know when people, they say that their life flashed before their eyes just before they died?
Yep.
It was slightly different. It was almost like all the things that were necessary for me to perform that action flashed before my eyes, and it all came together like a puzzle. I was like, that makes so much sense. And you see, and I attribute it to faith and all glory to God on this. I see what he was doing. I see the wisdom of why there were these things that happened throughout my life. Because if they didn't happen, I wouldn't have been able to perform that action. And it all made sense. And I was like, you're a funny guy, aren't you? God's a funny dude, and he is a dude. He's a very funny dude. And when you realize that he does things, it doesn't make sense in the moment, but later on with the benefit of hindsight, it will come to fruition and you'll see the perfectly laid out plan as if it's like a mind map on the board. And so, look, that's all I can really say on that.
Then obviously the pandemic happened for another 3 years. You had your channels gone, you're on Instagram, you're on, I'm assuming, Telegram and all those other things, and you're getting more and more followers. And then you bring out Nigel Farage, is it?
Yeah.
How do you go from, because you held a few events, obviously through the election where you had a bunch of people there, so you had that, so you sort of knew how to talk to venues and stuff, but bringing somebody from overseas who's high profile, like how do you go about reaching out to someone like that?
Yeah, look, Nigel Farage was someone that, I was connected to from a friend. Nigel is the guy that connected me with Charlie Kirk so that I could come into the Turning Point Australia brand.
Okay.
So it was basically a connection that I happened to have from school. It was Nigel connections have a tendency to breed connections. Once you have that, it's like, oh, okay, Mr. Brexit, it tends to open up doors.
Yeah.
But it's important to network because sometimes you'll be shocked how you come into connection with a guy like him.
So it wasn't just a cold call. You guys you'd obviously spoken through other networks. So it's a friend of a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Sort of happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And then so you've gone from Nigel, then how many shows was that?
When we did it, it was Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne.
And what sort of facilities did you use for that? Like how big were they?
No, look, that was a decent size. It was about 1 to 1,500 people. Yeah, it was decently sized. Yeah, despite all the things that the police were trying to do to shut us down, especially in Sydney. We pushed through it. But no, it was very well received. The Australian audience found him very encouraging as a speaker, yeah.
And then, so after that happened, you've then gone to, like with this whole panel and everything you've got behind us now, was that the goal at some point, or? I realised something in the referendum. I realised that we're playing a lot of, we're being very reactive and we're not really being proactive. We're kind of allowing the enemy to push us around. Then I realised, I'm going to need to take some time away after we win this referendum because I knew we were going to win it. I was under no impressions that we weren't going to win it. But after that, I need to take the summer off to build this thing because it's going to take some time. And it did. It took me, I haven't posted in like 4 or 5 months now. It's ridiculous how long it's taken. But this panel is so that we can actually get on the front foot again. It's the launch pad for all my political activism as well with regards to elections. It's going to be a critical tool so that we can take back the public square and provide proper journalism that hasn't been done in the past and commentary. So you've had 4 or 5 months off. Were you all concerned at all that the people wouldn't come back, or were you doing newsletters or something in the meantime, or just disappeared?
No, completely disappeared. It's funny. I told people I was going to be building the war room, but people did. There were a lot of people very concerned for me, but I was genuinely offline, and this is the problem. It's a good thing because of COVID. It trauma bonded people in my audience to me. It's really weird. But unfortunately, that means that it comes with a lot of responsibility when that happens. Now, there's a lot of people that's happened with. Rukshan has a cult following like that. Harvey does. Topher Field does. Monica Smith does. There's a lot of these personalities out there that's happened to. And when you have that, you can take that to the bank. That's really valuable. So when I turned on the camera again this week, it performed better than it usually did, actually. Yeah, people did. Yeah, they responded very well. They missed the journalism. They missed the commentary. It's almost as if they're right where I left them, except they had missed me a little bit more.
Yeah.
But this time I'm not going away again. I knew I'm not going to have another break for another few years. I hadn't had a break for a while before this, and but no, I'm back now. I'd done a bit of travel. I went to Africa and Zimbabwe and South Africa for a bit as well while I was away. But this place is now built, and we're ready for another run.
Yeah. So is there any stage when you were going on through this whole thing where you were sort of thinking, geez, I'm a bit over my head here, or, was there any time you didn't feel like you were up to, like the responsibility to others now seems to be almost the driver now, where you couldn't sort of terminate if you wanted to because you owe it to other people now. Is that, so we talk to people here who feel like an imposter a lot of the time, where their first job that they did, they're like, well, I've done the training, but I've never done it in real life or whatever. But when we spoke to Matty yesterday, and he's everything's been a progression, so he never felt like it was out of reach.
Yeah.
And the first time it seemed to sort of even feel awkward was when he started his own business, because he was now in charge and all the decisions lay on him. Whereas, just wondering if there's any stage where you've gone, like, deciding to build this is obviously quite a large investment and stuff.
Yeah, it's tough, I'm sure a lot of Aussies watching this would probably think this guy's really arrogant, but I think sometimes my arrogance might be mistaken for my confidence in God and my faith. Whenever I've come to an obstacle that I've been unsure about, because I have been unsure at times, just like anything, you consult the people around you, because there are people that I have around me that they know me, they've known me for a couple of decades, and they know if I'm straying from my values. If there's something that I don't understand in terms of knowledge, I'm often shocked by how quickly the right person comes into my life when I need it. Like if there's something, for example, like maybe I'm having a little bit, I'm not sure how to structure something for a corporate structure, or maybe I'm looking to buy a new newspaper or something and I don't know any journalists that can help me with it, or editors. The right people, they tend to show up. And it's quite amazing. It's like there's a guy upstairs, and I'm a player in his game. I'm a pawn in his game. And then you realize that, it's actually quite liberating, because you realize you're not calling the shots.
It's interesting because you've got people like some people really back themselves due to confidence, and you've got other ones who believe in fate, where they're just like, well, it's already been decided. So and they don't get imposter syndrome because they think everything that's happening is already pre-recorded, and then other people have faith and they do that. So it's interesting to see what people lean on during different times where they feel a bit overwhelmed.
You've got to be careful though. You've got to be careful, because it's a constant battle against pride. Pride is the quickest way to demolish me. It comes from within. If I start taking credit for things that, I didn't do, or I overestimate things that I did, then that's it. I'm over. It's done. And the marketplace will decide. Not only the people watching, but as I said, God's a funny guy. He's ironic and he's got a sense of humor. And, if I'm straying from the plan, because that's the point. When you say you're a Christian, when you say you want to do that, doesn't mean you're going to go and reform the Australian electoral system and bring transparency to it. It means that, God, I'm giving you my life. I appreciate that you know my heart better than I know it myself, and you know the best things that are for me. I'm giving my life to you. All of my skills, all of my natural talents that you imprinted in my DNA, which is the reason why no one else has my DNA. Now it's up to you. Where do I fit in this puzzle? I will follow you, basically. And so when you have that, I'd almost describe it as almost cowardly, because it's like you're not calling the shots. You're not independently strong. You're relying on the big guy. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I am. But when I'm weak, I'm strong. And when I'm strong and prideful, I'm weak. And that's the reality.
So how does, like, a question I've always wondered, like, how does faith and agency tie together? So you're talking about a lot of the things coming together at the right time, but then, like, how much hustle is in the background, say, putting the Farage events and that sort of thing together? Like,
with the tours, I have a very dedicated team that do that. It's not my area of expertise, and the right people showed up at the right time for that. But in terms of maybe the podcast, the hustle behind that, and look, I apply myself as if I'm working, for God, basically. I'm like, okay, this has to be done. He said it's got to be done, and this is the deadline. I will make it happen.
So do you look at it like he's always watching you, so if you go lazy, it's on you? Because then you got like David Goggins, obviously, he's watching himself. I mean, I don't know if he's religious as well, but Goggins is like, he's got an imaginary bloke at the back of his head who's chasing him the whole time. You've obviously got God who's watching you all the time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, because I've seen a lot of people who sort of lose their way, go to drugs, do whatever else it is, and then when they decide to go with religion, myself, I'm not religious, but I've seen a lot of people that have turned their life around using religion, so I'm not against it. I've seen a lot of things go too far one way under religion as well. So there's obviously too much, I think, at some turns where you get involved. But it's interesting to see. Yeah, some people use religion. Some people use like networking, where they rely on other people. Other people have like families from the army or whatever. So
I haven't worked it out. This is the thing,
networks,
guys.
Yeah.
I don't know it all. I'm constantly learning. I'm developing. My relationship with God is like one with any of you guys. You're constantly developing and growing. One thing I know for a certainty is He's not done teaching me. He's constantly teaching me. In fact, sometimes He gives you a timeout. But I don't know if I've said this on camera before, but during the referendum, a month and a half before the referendum, I got really sick with tonsillitis. I was in New Zealand, I was filming, and I got a really bad case of tonsillitis, and I almost couldn't speak at all. Without painkillers, I couldn't speak. And I did a couple of interviews while I was there, and you can see my I had to push through it to get this content. When I got back to Australia, I was pretty much hospitalised. And I had a really severe case where I couldn't even breathe. It was really bad. And I was bedridden for a few days in the hospital, in the emergency ward at times. And it was like a timeout from God. It was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you straining your body to this extent? It was in that moment that this was born, actually. It was a chance to... I don't know how I want us to get about this. When I was in the hospital, I had to wrestle with some very uncomfortable facts about how I've been operating over the last few years. And the biggest one I had to get past was there's many people in politics, even your favourite politicians that I've helped, even some of the personalities that I've helped. And the moment they need something from me, they'll pick up the phone and they'll call me and say, hey, I need it. And I always deliver. But the moment I need something, it's not the case. And I'm not talking about favours. I'm talking about, things where you actually need it and you're working together towards a common cause. And it's I understand why politicians are like that. The system's made them like that. The incentive structure's like that. But it really made me quite shitty. And when I realised that, I realised, okay, you need a way to pay for your base costs right now to keep things going. You need to get serious about building this to the next level. Otherwise, you're just going to keep running yourself into the ground, ending up in hospital. And for what? For these people that don't have your back anyway. Mm. When I realized that, I was like, yeah, okay, you know what? That does disturb me, but I'm glad that I've had this time out to think about that. And something really good has come out of it. And so 7 months later, which is what you see behind me, is that. This isn't related to Turning Point Australia, this behind me. Yep. Turning Point Australia is an entity owned by the Americans, Turning Point USA. Yep. This is something for Australians. It's something that's linked to my name, my relationship with my audience that I've built through quite a lot of trauma over the things we've gone through together, and the solutions we've come up through together, and the wins and the losses we've had together. And it's about creating a safe space and a hub for us to muster the troops for the next phase of what's happening. And this is an election year. We're 4 years on from when I started. It's the right time for it. It's
crazy how fast the elections come back around again.
Yeah, I'm 27 now, so I was 21 when everything started.
Wow.
Well, I'm grey and over 40 now, so it's things are a bit different. When you Nigel. How do you get to Donald Trump Jr.?
Friend of Nigel. Very simple. Right. See, as I said, connections breed connections.
Yeah, so you literally just get, because this is a very common theme with the people we've spoken to, is you speak to one person, then you get to another person. Like, so we do a podcast with you, for example. We're obviously clearly leeching off your followers out of everything, right?
It's okay. I call it cross-contamination.
That's not a bad term. But there's people that listen to you that I guarantee you probably won't listen to Maddie, and vice versa. And then we have a lady who talked about her pregnancy and childbirth and stuff. I guarantee you they won't be the same people that listen to Maddie, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a thing that is coming out so far is like we'll speak to different, like you're very religious. We haven't had anyone religious talking religious. I mean, they may have been religious, but they haven't talked about it. Politics I've tried to keep out of it because you lose half your audience. but if they're talking to you, they're obviously political. And then from here you've got Donald Trump Jr. So to sort of go back to, be selfish, talk about us, we're trying to organise an event with getting some. So we have two veterans, for example. One does a podcast, one does comedy, and it's like we need to try and get them. And then we have a bloke who's a movie star that we're trying to get, and then we want to hold it at like the Palais. It's like, where would you start with that?
I'd have to.
What's the first incremental step?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things.
Because it's a lofty goal that we've tried to have. Yeah, look, but you've got to have an audience, then you've got to have whatever. But
again, I'm no event organizer. As I said, I'm a team. I have a team that does that. They're very good at what they do. They've done like 8 or 9 really big tours in the past. Happy to connect you with them. They'll have very granular answers for these questions.
Yeah.
But I mean, first things first. How big do you want to go? What's the lead in? What's the funding required? Because that's going to be dictated by the amount of people. What's the ticketing strategy? It all goes into it. Anything above 2,000 people, for example, is that what we're talking about?
Shoot for 500.
We'd love to have over 2,000. Ideally, I'd love to have the Palais, which I think is like, what's that, 3,000 or something?
Jeez.
Yeah. But like that's down at St Kilda. Like I went and saw Jeremy Piven there, right? So the circle here is, like Al and I have been talking, he wants to be Turtle. We've been talking about Entourage the whole time.
Well, the link too is that the way you've been talking about a lot of pieces falling into place and a lot of references and people introducing you, we've experienced exactly the same thing in the last month in particular. And that's been quite uncanny, probably in a way I haven't experienced before.
That's awesome.
I guarantee you, Joel tells you that's God talking to you.
No, look, I don't know. You guys can know. That's the amazing thing about this. I don't know.
But that's the thing. So, like the incremental steps, other people would say, well, it's a logical progression. Other people would say, well, someone's looking after you and they're guiding you down a path. Other people would say, we're just doing yes theory, where we just follow. We're just being positive and it's breeding positivity. So it's interesting how they all link up depending on who you are, but you can still be on the same path.
And you would probably refer to the Matthew principle, would you, with some of the things that have happened to you?
Yeah, look, God's, again, he's a funny guy. The way he does it is it's like he does it so that it's not – he helps you enough so that it's not scientifically proven, but he does it as little that it's still faith. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I do understand your faith part because us starting a podcast, for example, there was a bit of faith that we weren't going to get into too much grief from certain people, right? But we took the leap anyway to see what happened. And since then, like we had a bunch of goals, for example. One was literally speak to Matty Morris. And we released our first one on Monday. And by, when was it? Anyway, 2 days ago, we released it. And then yesterday we were speaking to him. So like how fast that happened. And then driving back through Sydney, like I was like, hey, you're free. And you're like, yeah. And I've got a brand new studio, etc. Like that was ridiculous. And then it would have been great to have Matty Williams on. But he was in Newcastle for a funeral, not a great time to, to hit him up. But he was there as well. So that the timings that things happens is very interesting sometimes. And even, for example, us talking to you about an event thing, and you're like, I know people that run events. If you could speak to us, I know every step that we have seems to be.
Yeah, I know. It reminds me of that line that Gandalf says in the Lord of the Rings at the very beginning. He's like, a wizard is never late. It always happens.
Yeah, right.
Things seem to happen right when they're intentional. And the idea is that God is out of time and space. He knows when things are going to happen. I mean, there's many battles in the Old Testament. He talks about the Israelites that are fighting the people in the Promised Land, and God sends like these asteroids, these stones that with pinpoint accuracy hit the enemy troops, but not the Israeli troops. I mean, there's some crazy stories about this. It's like how far in time from the Big Bang that he set those stones in motion. Like there's some crazy, all you got to do is have faith, in my opinion, and pray to God and have that conversation and relationship with him. But look, happy to help, if you guys need, connections with regards to...
So essentially though, you're saying you were kind of the conductor of the events and you've outsourced a lot of the organisation to people that understood that and that was
brand.
Their job.
So Turning Point Australia is one of the brands I own. That is the brand I operate under for the tours. I outsource the running of it to professionals because there are a crap ton, especially anything above 2,000 people. There's a crap ton of problems you'll run into. And these guys know what's good. They know counters to those problems. So.
But if you go, you can't. we can't just walk in there with zero funding though and go, hey, we want to hold an event, or do they? Will they speak to you if you have a decent enough idea?
No. They have. You have to place deposits on. You've got to pay in full before the event. There's a whole bunch of.
Yeah. But could you go in there if you're like, look, well, this is what we want to do, and then you go, okay, that deposit is this, then you can do crowdfunding and that sort of stuff. So like, will they speak to you for free, basically, to then say this is what you'll need before we talk to you about more stuff?
They'll entertain an inquiry.
Okay.
Of course they will. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's good business. But no, look, if you want all the answers and even some quotes, these companies, I know that they'll help you out. Yeah. They'll give you some numbers. They'll tell you what's minimum requirement. They'll tell you at what points you'll need the full amount of money and what points you can drag it out.
Yeah.
They're the experts. I really don't get involved with that stuff because I stick to my lane as much as I can. But it is an expert field here.
Yeah. You say that, but this is like quite a intimidating endeavour for us, and maybe it was for you, but you seem to sit here like you were quite confident going through it the whole way. Is that because there was so much meaning and purpose in doing those things for you? Like, what's the? Yeah,
look, I don't know. I just trust my team. Yeah, to do what they've done previously. And at the end of the day, if the whole thing goes belly up, every ticket holder that bought a ticket will get refunded, and that's the worst case scenario. Every sponsor will get refunded. And when you're operating from that perspective, it's like, okay, so I'm the only one that could lose money. That's okay. I'm okay with that. So let's go do this thing, basically.
So how did you get a team, though? Because they've obviously got to speak to you and then...
Oh, no, connection. There's connection. So it's a company that runs it. So they're their own company. They've done tours in the past that have not been related to us. And that's how they do it. Yeah, they run the whole thing.
Cool.
Yeah. So are you thinking of multiple cities or just one event?
Oh, just the one to start with.
Right. Yeah. I don't think you'd require a full team.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad idea to consult a professional group for free and just get those opinions. Watch out for this pothole. Watch out for that. Yeah. But no. So what's the idea of the event? I mean, if you're going to sell it, if you're going to drag me on camera and get my audience to listen in, I mean, at least sell the event. What's it about? What are you trying to pitch?
So we do challenges. We give people challenges to do things. It's generally the sort of the gist that we're doing. So I gave Al one to do an open mic night, and then we went and watched another veteran, Jared Goundry. He does comedy, and sometimes he does a lot of like veteran stuff where he talks about things in the army. And then whilst we were there, he came and spoke to us afterwards. And he'd been on Matty Morris's podcast as well. So we spoke to him about that, and then we said, we're doing challenges where we do this, and he's like, Al should open for me. So that went from Al just doing an open mic night just down some back alley place to now doing it with a comedian. And then we went and spoke to Matty yesterday, and we're like, have you ever thought about doing a live podcast? And he's like, yeah, I'd do one, but I want to be on there, and I want to be on there with a certain personality.
A landmark guest.
Yeah. So we've got to try and get onto him, but then it's like, okay, well, now you've got those three. Now we need to do it at a venue. But if you've got a name that will pull something, it probably gives you a bit more credibility. But it's just interesting so far how everything's gone. I challenged Al, then the next one was a comedian, and then he's like, well, come and open for me. And then we're like, the live podcast dude will do that, and the live comedian already does show, so those two, we can get them working together. And then we need to try and pinch this bloke.
A lot of the people are sort of naturally coming together, but we'll probably have to do the work to make an event like that happen.
But even the progression in this week has been comedian, met him, he did that. Then he went from there to podcast, he wants to do a live one. And we're like, well, those two work together already. The live podcast there is amusing, but he needs the big guest. So now we need to try and get the guest. And then we're like, well, now we're speaking to Joel. Joel's had big guests and he's organised events. It just seems to be very step by step. So if we speak to your people, maybe they'll give us a heads up on what we can do next.
As a general rule in this sort of space, if you have someone that you need, just ask me, because if I don't know the person, which is, pretty rare, there will be someone I know that will know.
Yeah.
And I can ask them. I know the right avenue to go to. So, and my contact book is open, man. So it's perfectly fine.
Awesome.
I'd like to ask, and to sort of sum up what you've communicated today, we probably all have different experiences, but growing up in Melbourne, I'd say my family's probably atheistic and then to agnostic. We've had a few people on now that kind of aren't imposters. I really find it hard to interpretate this because it's an education thing from growing up, but is that faith for you? Like, you've had confidence because you believe in the things you're doing, you feel they're speaking to you. So if I was doing the things you'd done on some sort of maybe random media topic, I probably just wouldn't see it through because there wouldn't be the cause there. Like, is there one sort of summary of what you've spoken to today that's driven you to do it?
Look, man, I don't know how to answer that. Look, I saw something wrong.
Yeah.
And as Jordan Peterson said, where responsibility's been abdicated, opportunity lurks. I'm for minimizing hurt and damage in the world. I'm a Christian, conservative, with a streak of libertarian in me. I don't like the government in my life. And unfortunately, the last few years have been anything but that. And it's going to get worse unless good men stand up and stop it. And so what I see, and the 24 projects that I'm launching off this, is what we need to actually stop it. And, whether that's faith that I get that from, whether that's the morals I was born with, whether that's biology, I don't know. I like to attribute it mainly to faith and my parents and where I was born and the time I was born and the opportunities I was given. But it is also an element of, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
I've been incredibly, I'm going to use the word privileged. I've been incredibly blessed, rather, with regards to the opportunities I've been given in my life, that I can't take credit for the opportunities. And therefore I have a responsibility to do it, because there's not many people that have had whether it's the speech training, the leadership training, the social media training that I have. So it's like, well, Joel, comes with the ground, It's like what would you call it? Not the sword of Damocles. It's like the crown. I wouldn't call it the crown of thorns, because I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but it comes with responsibility. That's the point. And sometimes responsibility hurts, but men feel meaning through responsibility. It's not about happiness. It's about, oh, that's a heavy thing. Jordan Peterson, go and find the heaviest thing you can find and lift it. I don't know. It's just, I don't know how to explain where that comes from, but it's just how I've been raised.
Have these chairs been set in yet?
Set in?
Yeah. Have you sat in them yet? You're saving it for the very first pod. And what do you do? What are you going to do? You like TV or something, or what's the next big thing for you? TV?
No. Online is way more powerful now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different game now with the world we're in.
And
not politics. Not politics. I never.
You're not doing this about politics?
No. I don't want to be a politician.
Oh yeah.
Well, Jordan would say you can have more influence from the outside of politics.
Exactly. And that's why. Yeah, he often ponders that question, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You would have heard that part where he's like, a lot of people have said, should I join the Conservative Party there and run? It's like, nah, you can move hearts and minds without.
I think he's done his retraining online now, hasn't he? The Canadian retraining he had to do.
And look who they've got running now. Pierre Poilievre, he's going to win the next Canadian election.
Are you all up and about with the Argentinian bloke?
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He's been great, eh?
He's phenomenal. I mean,
good to laugh at.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because he does some random stuff which gets him the attention, and then people look him up and they're like, oh, he's actually quite bright. Yeah.
He's phenomenal. Well, he's an economist.
Yeah.
I was pleased to learn. Yeah, I was watching his long-form interview he did with Ben Shapiro recently, yesterday actually, and he was saying he's an economist, and that's why he knows about tax policy and what he's done.
I think they drastically underestimated him, because wasn't he a movie star or something?
He was.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm just a movie star that's out there, and then they, and then they just hit him up, and he starts doing all those extravagant things, throwing things off the wall, and then they go, yeah, but how do you feel about currency? And then he goes and he's like, oh, I'll tell you. And you're like, oh, geez. They're like, we shouldn't have underestimated this bloke.
No. And what he's done, he runs through that podcast. He runs through the metrics. What he's done is nuts. Like there was one day there, they were approaching, before he got elected, they were approaching tripling their currency in a single day. And what he's done up to this date has basically stopped that from happening. His approval ratings at the same as when he got elected, which is usually the highest for when politicians get elected. Amazing guy. I mean, he's the chainsaw guy, right?
Yeah, chainsaw guy. This is so good. But it's funny because you do, we did the Angry Victorians thing to get some, and people just like, oh, you guys are angry rioters or whatever. You're like, oh, God, just pay attention. We don't have any money. With your views and stuff, have you been noticing like Sky News, like how much they get versus how much you get? Because obviously with Rogan and Brand and stuff, they're getting a lot more views than actual news things.
It's tough to measure how many Aussies view Sky News content versus how many Australians. That's the challenge. Also, we don't know Sky's views that aren't on YouTube and Facebook.
True.
Because they get a lot of views just from Fox, and so I don't know how much that is. One thing I do know for a certainty. That video I did a couple of days ago on Bishop Murray, and it was my return video. that got across platforms 250,000 views, whereas the ABC's Q&A averages about 100 to 150,000 views.
Okay.
And they receive $1 billion every year in Australian taxpayer money.
Yeah. Well, they're getting 400,000 less or something after the Heston Russell thing.
Yeah. Good on Heston.
Yeah.
Good on Heston.
It's an incredible flip in, would you say, the free market of media?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The free market will decide, you know.
Yeah.
And that's good, and that's why they're constantly trying to curb us online. You know, they're trying to use these recent stabbings in Sydney, unfortunately, to push misinformation laws and censorship, and that's going to be going after the little guys like us, you know. And it's my obligation to stand up against that, because there's a lot of people that could be bigger than me. You know, who knows? You guys might be bigger than me in 4 or 5 years, 3 years, 2 years.
Good chance. We had
1
12 downloads this morning.
Oh, yeah.
The compounding interest curve is going.
Guys, there were once upon a time I was there. Like, you know, I had another podcaster here this morning, and I had the exact same discussion with him. I said, look, there's no shame in it, man. Honestly, like, this is an important time for you, because now's the time you can make all the mistakes. You can work out what works. The funnier your podcast is, the better it will do in terms of it'll be more exponential growth.
Yep.
With me, it's obviously a little bit more serious. If I'm funny, I swear it's because it's an accident. It's not because I've actually intentionally gone out and be like, I'm the comedian.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people like the TikTok guy, John Bernard, the one that was predicting the COVID cases. He's the guy that did the cash video.
They're quite amusing. Withdrawing cash
from the bank.
Okay,
No, it's because, you know, it's from my transgender surgery. Or, bleached my butthole or something. That's what he said. So that content, viral, instantly viral. That video alone got hundreds of millions of views.
Yeah.
Humour disarming a serious topic, or
No, and especially to an Australian audience, we're more susceptible to it.
Yeah.
You know, the Australian mainstream young audience are less susceptible to my sort of content. They'd be more susceptible to John Bernard's content, and that's okay. That's good. You know, I've said this is what I'm doing, but there's a big market to go after. It is harder than in America. I mean, in America they've got a much larger talent pool than Australia, but per capita. But at the same time, there is a market here that's not being filled right now by the mainstream media. So there is a huge opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I've noticed today, though, is how well spoken and succinct you are. We're trying to focus on not doing our ums and ahs and likes at the moment.
I struggle with that too, man.
Well, I don't know, but you've iterated and polished that quite well sitting down with you today. So,
you know, the best guy I've seen on that is Douglas Murray. Very efficient. I don't know how he does it, but a lot of the things I say here, I've not only had a lot of practice, but I've actually had a lot of practice saying the exact same lines.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, how could you screw that up, Joel?
Well, that was the thing Heston was saying during the election. Like we'd sit in the car and he would get me to say something and I'd do it in 15 paragraphs. And then he'd be like, right, you've got 3 seconds and you need to be able to repeat the question. So if they use it as a soundbite and do whatever, I was like, how do we know these things?
Yep.
You know, where I'll go on a rant and I've lost myself. And then I'm going to keep talking until I can find myself again. And then one of the other boys that comes on sometimes, he's like, wrap it up. You know, like he's doing that.
Yeah.
But it's
not easy. It's not easy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you need to tell them what they need to hear as efficiently as possible. And you've got to sound intelligent but not too intelligent. Sometimes if you don't like the question, you've got to change the question, you know, change the whole landscape.
As in you don't have to answer the question someone asks you? Is that what you mean?
Sometimes it's an ambush, you know. There'll be a I forgot what they call it. It's a loaded question where they say, you know, like if someone asks, this is the classic example they use. It's like, so how long have you been beating your wife? You know what I mean? It's like,
and you can get baited quite easily.
yeah, exactly.
and you're like only 3 months.
only 3 months. Like,
You're like, what do you
Humour
mean?
doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Or it can be clipped very easily.
Literally. And so, look, there's a lot of these tactics I'm no expert in, but you know, some of the senators might be a bit better on their feet. Like Pauline Hanson's brilliant. She's like, no, it's not about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's lovely. Anyway, yes, that's me, guys. And
Excellent.
So what's the future?
What's the future?
Like when's this happening?
Sure. So what this is it's a 2-hour show once a week.
Yeah, right.
That should give me about 30 to 35 clips out of the one podcast, and that gets uploaded maybe 4 or 5 a day.
Okay.
And that pays for everything pretty much. You know, if you there's 9 ways to monetize a podcast.
So are you releasing podcasts just everywhere, and then are you doing long form stuff like online, like as in YouTube and stuff? Or
No, long form. Yeah.
Okay.
So the 2-hour podcast, it's with usually 4 guests.
Yep.
We'll go through the issues of the week. The news articles pretty much write themselves. There's enough crap out there.
So you're basically doing the project, but I dare say the other side.
Yeah, and a lot more talking, and it's a lot more real. I mean, and what's really going on rather than virtue signaling.
Are you having? Are your guests? Are you going to have sort of left and right sort of guests, or is it going to be mainly conservatives?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So actual debate for a change.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Look, there will be that'll probably be, it won't just be a regular once a week show. Maybe we'll do extra ones where it's just, maybe there's a high profile guest that comes out, like the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand or something, and he wants to sit and have a conversation, and it'll just be me and him, and we can go through some of the things that he's talking about rather than diluting it. Then there's other times we might do a topical discussion where it is left and right, hence why the red's on the left side and the blue's on the right. And we'll have a climate change debate that we're not having.
It's funny 'cause most people that listen to you will be like, oh, he's just going to do red both sides. And you're like, no, he's not a communist.
It's all right to have different opinions as long as you speak and you listen, and what's wrong with that?
But I think that's going to be the thing that upsets a lot of people is you literally have both sides. You're like, hey, let's just rein it in. They're speaking, you listen to that, and then we can retort over there as opposed to just yelling over the top.
The reason I gave you the stats of Q&A is the natural progression of this podcast is to go to a live audience.
Are you going to call it A&Q?
A&Q.
I'm coining that. You can keep it.
Yeah. I think the power of humour when you have an audience there to intimidate the conservative guests is powerful.
Yep.
And I think that we can do that with things like Chris Bowen saying, nuclear energy is the most expensive form of energy. Well, that's absolute crap. And that's the thing. If you have an audience, it's a natural BS monitor.
Yeah.
And so, anyway.
And everyone's like, boo.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well,
that was very interesting. Yeah, you've been quite a different guest for us, so really appreciate that angle.
Yeah. I hope your audience enjoys it, and I hope that...
let's be honest, they'll be your audience.
I have no idea. No, look,
my mum will listen, so...
That's good. That's good.
My mum, Al's mum, that's about it at the moment.
My audience is actually 66% female.
Really?
Which is really weird.
I mean, I only had 300.
Skews YouTube and some of those things, the analytics.
The YouTube's more male. Instagram's the most female. Facebook is also mostly female, maybe 60% female. 60% typically women over 35.
Yeah.
Is the largest chunk, and then obviously there's older men and and then there's younger men. But in terms of the big gap is basically my dating market. So,
and mine. Yep.
And pretty much our dating market. I mean, women.
I mean, you guys can have sugar mamas though.
I'm not sure the last time I met a conservative woman.
Yeah.
There you go. No, look, they exist. They exist. But yeah, in terms of my prospects, it's there's not many that tune in. But maybe that's a good thing. I don't want someone to date me because I've got a following.
Yeah, true.
That's not a good formula.
I've got some mates who are footy players and they were the same. They're like, they had to date their high school sweetheart because everyone else was just like, oh, he plays for such and such. And you're like, oh, yeah. So he never trusted any of the girls after that. So you
just can't. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, this will be Al. You'll have to date before we get famous, Al. Otherwise, you won't be able to trust him.
That's all I got. Yeah. Striving to get famous.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
You got anything else you want to say about when this is kicking off, or where to watch you?
No, look.
Like where's this show going to be?
This will be everywhere. This will be on. The clips will be everywhere.
Yep.
The actual main show will be uploaded and live streamed to Facebook and YouTube and Rumble.
Yeah.
But no, the clips will be everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Joel Jammal or Turning Point Australia.
Yep.
But no, to your audience, even to the people from my channel listening, like and subscribe if you liked it. If you want to stay for the content, check out some of the other stuff they've got. The liking really helps with the algorithms and the comment really help with the algorithms if you didn't know, and it'll be recommended to other markets, similar people. So yeah, help them out, because if you guys didn't do that for me, then I wouldn't be here either. So awesome.
That's the sort of stuff we need to start working out how to throw in.
Generosity, Christian value.
Oh, good for that.
Thank you very much.
Right, God bless you guys. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Just do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Just do it. Simple.